Always be prepared, that was the motto we learned in the Boy Scouts. The Scout Law was a different story: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. But I guess they forgot to mention naive and foolish. That's how I felt after reading the email on my wife's phone. Normally I wouldn't touch her phone, and she knew it. That's why she hadn't bothered with any extra security. I've always been a straight arrow, a by-the-book guy, never one to invade someone's privacy. But Grace was leaving for a work trip in a few weeks, and I was trying to recall the name of her hotel. She had mentioned it before, but I hadn't been paying close attention. I didn't want to start another argument over something so trivial. Lately, our arguments had been becoming more frequent. This trip would be the longest we'd been apart since we got married 6 years ago, and I was considering doing something romantic like sending her flowers. After all, what better way to show love than sending flowers to her hotel in the romantic city of Paris? Little did I know Paris was indeed a city of love, just not for me. No, that was reserved for Mark, who was joining her on the trip. When I unlocked her phone using our wedding date as the passcode, I wasn't prepared for what I found. I was staring at a series of emails she and Mark had exchanged over the past month, explicit, unfiltered, and shameless. They talked about walking down the Champs Élysées at night and taking a boat ride on the Seine under the moonlight. What caught me off guard wasn't just the affair itself, but the fact that Grace and Mark were using their work email accounts. You'd think they'd know better. Grace, like me, is an attorney, and Mark was a paralegal at her firm. All three of us had been involved in enough legal cases where we saw firsthand how carelessly written emails could unravel someone's life. Yet, here they were, behaving like complete amateurs. The reason I hadn't paid much attention when Grace initially mentioned the trip was because something didn't feel right. 7 years of practicing law had honed my instincts, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up when she told me about it. She'd been too flippant, avoiding eye contact when she mentioned that the trip would be strictly work-related and that there wouldn't be any time to enjoy the city. I found it odd, but I never imagined it would lead to my worst nightmare. Now, staring at these emails, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like a knife twisting in my heart. "Why don't you just leave your Boy Scout husband so we can spend more time together without any worries?" Mark had written. "He makes me feel safe," Grace replied. "So why are you cheating on him with me at every opportunity?" "You excite me," she responded with a smiley face emoji. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I needed to print the email exchange. My first instinct as a litigator was to preserve the evidence. After printing the emails and stashing them in my briefcase, I began to consider my options. My mind swirled with violent thoughts, but I knew better. I'm not some brute. I get paid to use my brain, not my fists. Still, the urge to hurt them both was overpowering. But first, I needed to find out more about their hotel arrangements. It wasn't for sending flowers, though. I wasn't sure what I needed the information for, but I just knew I needed it. Maybe as a target. Hotel St. James, Albany, near the Louvre, just a 5-minute walk from the International Chamber of Commerce, where Grace and Mark would be working when they weren't sneaking off to be together, that is. With that out of the way, I turned to the legal side of things. A quick search on New York divorce law refreshed my memory. Adultery is grounds for divorce and can impact issues like alimony and property division, but there are defenses to such claims. One is condonation. If I found out about the affair and then resumed sexual relations with her, it could weaken my case. I needed to get out of the house fast without confrontation. I was determined to hit her with full force, both legally and emotionally, without giving her any warning. I headed to our master bedroom and began packing. I finished quickly and placed the suitcases by the front door. By the time Grace returned from her morning run, I had already assembled all the critical documents I needed: bank statements, credit card records, retirement account information, pay stubs, and our mortgage details. I heard her moving around in the kitchen as I came up from my basement office. I decided to appear flustered and rushed when I saw her. "Guess what?" "I'm going to Paris," I said with a forced smile. Grace's face went pale, her eyes wide with shock. What? Paris? New York? She stammered, trying to regain her composure. Sven just called, I continued. We're doing depositions for my insurance case and we need to prep the witness. Apparently, we lost a motion to compel and the judge is furious. The entire discovery schedule is in disarray. I'm going to be on the road for weeks, though I might stop by now and then to do some laundry. Poor thing, she said with feigned concern. Maybe your firm is hiring. I'd much rather be in your Paris, I replied, watching her expression change from concern to a sly smirk. Send me your resume. Maybe you have the right pedigree for us to consider you, she shot back. That was a low blow. Grace's law school ranked higher than mine, and she never missed a chance to remind me of it. She moved toward me as if to offer a hug, but I turned and headed back to my office before she could close the distance. The violent thoughts returned, and I wasn't sure I could keep them in check. As I was getting ready to leave, Grace asked what I wanted for dinner. Can't stay, I said, moving quickly through the kitchen. Sven is losing his mind and wants me on the road immediately. I grabbed my suitcases and headed out the door, ignoring her puckered lips as she leaned in for a kiss goodbye. I think I might be coming down with something, I lied. My throat's been sore all afternoon, probably just allergies, but I don't want you catching anything. Grace followed me to the car as I loaded my bags, a worried look on her face. When will you be back? She asked. Probably not until Tuesday, I lied again. After Paris, we're heading to Baltimore. I thought I saw her mind working, calculating how my absence could provide opportunities for her and Mark. I backed out of the driveway, waving goodbye as I drove off. Hopefully, she would just assume I was preoccupied with work and annoyed that I had been called in on a Friday. I pulled into a nearby strip mall and found a coffee shop to gather my thoughts. Lawyers think better on paper, so I started making a list of things to do. Reconciliation never crossed my mind. There would be retribution, the only question was how severe. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I didn't recognize the number. Yes? I answered impatiently. Mr. Dalton, I'm Sam Willis. We haven't met, but I'll get straight to the point. I got your number from some property records. I'm in the business of buying old houses and tearing them down to build new ones. I know. People don't always like what I do, but they don't hate me when I hand them the check. His rapid speech left me no time to react. Well, I'd like to buy your house to tear it down. I'd offer to build you a new one, but I can't guarantee the timing, especially with all the permit issues. I make my money by flipping properties fast, but I think I can offer you a very good price if you and your wife are motivated to sell. It was hard not to smile. Grace had chosen the house right before we got married. It was an older colonial with a large backyard that backed up to a wooded area. She loved the treehouse in the yard, perfect for future children, she said. I had just liked the price and the proximity to the train station, making my commute to work a breeze. Mr. Willis, I said, I'll be in and out over the next few days, so I can't guarantee access to the property. Call me Sam, he replied. I don't need to see the inside. Like I said, it's a teardown. I've already checked out the exterior. Can we meet Sunday morning? Sure, Sam, I said. By the way, I'll probably handle the closing myself with a power of attorney for my wife. She's really tied up with work. No problem. I'll have the paperwork ready. After noting the address, I began to see the contours of a plan forming. Grace felt safe with her Boy Scout husband, did she? Little did she know that scouting was based on military principles like stealth, cunning, and self-reliance. She wouldn't see what was coming until it was too late. But first, I needed to gather more information. I stepped outside to the car for some privacy and dialed a number. Mike, it's Tom. I need a favor, and I need it now. Mike Harris was a private investigator I had worked with on pro bono cases involving clients who couldn't afford legal representation. He had a knack for getting results when law enforcement failed. I had recommended Mike for a nasty divorce case where a stepfather was abusing his stepdaughter. Mike's evidence put the guy behind bars when the police couldn't, and that evidence expedited the divorce. Mike listened as I explained my situation. You think Grace is going to have him in your bed tonight? Is she that bold? He asked. She was top of her class in law school, I replied. She doesn't think she can make mistakes. I'll handle this myself, Mike said. I owe you for that Rivera case. It brought me a lot of business. I appreciate it, Mike, I said. By the way, there's a treehouse in the backyard. You might want to use it. It looks directly into the master bedroom. She likes to leave the shades open. Used to freak me out, but whatever got her motor running, you know? You can access it through the woods behind the house. No fences, no dogs. There's a service road on the other side where you can park. Thanks. I'll set up a camera outside to monitor who comes and goes. That's fine. You're using Bob for the divorce, right? I want to make sure everything's airtight. Yes and yes, Mike replied. Okay, if you're right, we'll know soon enough. I then called Bob, my divorce attorney. Bob, I want to hire you. Grace is cheating, and I want to end this marriage with no chance of reconciliation. After bringing him up to speed, Bob said, Come to my office tomorrow. We might as well get started. It sounds like you've done your homework, and you've got the evidence. The only tricky part will be the financial settlement. Grace works at a big firm too, so she'll have the resources to fight this. Leave that to me, I said. We'll settle this like civilized people. Just remember, Tom, I'm not a criminal lawyer. If things go south, I won't be able to help you. Don't worry, Bob. You'll be pleasantly surprised. My last call was to Maggie, an old friend. Hello, Maggie. It's Tom. The silence on the other end was deafening. Maggie, you son of a nice to talk to you too, Tom. What do you want? I need your help. It's about Grace. She's cheating on me. What a shocker. I can't help you emotionally or physically anymore, Tom. I'm seeing someone. I'm sure he's a great guy. Look, I'm sorry for how things ended between us, and I'm sorry I let Grace push you out of my life. But I need your help now as a friend. There was a long pause, then laughter. I'm in, Maggie said. You always knew how to make me laugh. Thanks, Maggie. When this is all over, I'll have to meet Mr. Lucky and take you both out to dinner. It's a date, she replied. I needed a place to lay low and plan my next move, so I checked into a long-term hotel in Fairfax, far enough from Grace and my usual spots that I wouldn't risk being seen. I settled in and grabbed something to eat across the street. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to eat to absorb the alcohol I planned on consuming. The restaurant was a small place called El Rancho. The food wasn't great, but it would do. The bartender looked at me like he recognized me, but I didn't pay much attention. I had bigger problems. The place had pupusas on the menu, which meant it was a Central American joint masquerading as Mexican. Most people wouldn't know the difference. I ordered some cheap tequila with my meal, knowing the hangover would be brutal but feeling like it was part of the process. The waitress brought over a bottle of top-shelf tequila and a glass, courtesy of the bartender. When I looked up, he saluted me. It took a moment, but I remembered him from the Rivera hearings. He had been in the last row of the courtroom, always alone. No one ever sat next to him. One of the client's daughters had hugged him once, but when I asked Sonia who he was, she said he was just a family friend. I ate in silence, making notes on a legal pad and drinking more tequila. When I got up to use the restroom, I felt like I was on a ship. Everything was swaying. I steadied myself against the wall and returned to my booth where the bartender was now sitting across from me. Tom, nice to see you, he said, shaking my hand vigorously. I sat down and waited. I never thanked you for helping my cousin out with that scumbag she was married to, he said. I tried to brush it off, but he continued, he got badly beaten in prison. Did you know that? Really badly. They don't think he'll ever walk again or eat solid food. I felt a chill run down my spine. I hadn't heard. You, my friend, are not thinking rationally, he said with a smile. People who take violent revenge end up in prison. You don't want that, do you? I shook my head. No, I don't. Maybe I can help you out, he said. You help my cousin. I repay my debts. I looked at him skeptically. I don't even remember your name, he grinned. Some people call me the devil. To my friends, I'm Joe Garcia, I smirked. Do I need to sell my soul? Joe laughed. Don't be ridiculous. You're a lawyer. You don't have a soul. Call it professional courtesy. Now just give me your address, your wife's name, and tell me her daily routine. What are you going to do? I have some ideas, but you don't need to know the details. Just get a burner phone so we can stay in touch and don't come back here again. It's better that way. I told Joe about hiring Mike. My plan to be out of the house until Grace left for Paris and her travel plans. Joe nodded. Just one question, Tom. Is there any chance of reconciliation? Forgiveness? Mercy? I took a deep breath, steadying my emotions. Trust and loyalty were the foundation of my marriage, and Grace had destroyed them. None, I replied. Good. Don't worry about a thing. Joe waved the waitress away when she brought the bill, but allowed me to leave a generous tip. He also let me take the tequila bottle, but warned me to pace myself. I needed my wits about me for the battle ahead. Sunday morning arrived without much of a hangover, and I made it to Bob's office at 10 a.m. Mike was already there. Sorry, Tom, Mike said. She's screwing him in your bed. I got it all on video. I made you a copy, but you might not want to watch it. You're better off not looking, Bob interjected. I don't want you doing something stupid and getting arrested. Just give me the summary, I said. Mike detailed everything, from their arrival to their explicit encounters. It's all physical, no real conversation between them. They're just using each other. Does that change your plan? No, I said, it doesn't. Mike handed me a DVD with the footage. I took it without a word. So what do you want to do? Bob asked. File for divorce on the grounds of adultery, but don't serve her yet, I replied. Bob looked at me with concern. You're not planning anything crazy, are you? Just trust me, Bob. Everything will go smoother than you think. Bob grimaced. All right, I'll file the paperwork on Monday afternoon. Let me know the docket number. Just remember, I don't do criminal law, Bob warned. You won't need to, I assured him. My next stop was a meeting with Sam Willis. It was a productive meeting where I learned we could sell the house for $600,002,000,000 more than the mortgage without paying real estate agent commissions. Grace would be thrilled if she knew, but she wouldn't. Not until it was too late. As I left Sam's office, I checked my phone. No messages or calls. She must still be with Mark. I called my boss, Sven, and told him I needed 2 weeks off immediately or I was quitting. Sven panicked and agreed, knowing I was the only one who could handle the case. It was a slow period, so he could afford to give me some slack. With everything in place, I returned to my hotel to finalize my plans. By Monday evening, I was ready. Grace had left voicemails on Sunday night and Monday night, but I hadn't answered. I was saving my energy for Tuesday morning. Thanks to Mike's camera, I knew Mark had spent the night at our house and he would likely leave around 8 a.m. Grace would leave about half an hour later. So at 7 a.m., I walked through the front door and called out, "Honey, I'm home." I heard footsteps upstairs, followed by Grace descending the stairs in her robe, looking disheveled and panicked. "What a surprise," she said, trying to sound cheerful but clearly on the verge of a breakdown. "I thought you weren't back until Monday. You didn't answer my calls." "Sorry about that," I replied, feigning cheerfulness. "You know how it is on the road." I pretended not to notice the wine glasses in the living room and walked into the dining room. Grace stood in the doorway, watching me closely, trying to figure out how to keep me from going upstairs where Mark was obviously hiding. A knock at the door startled her. "Can you get that, honey?" I asked, while I laid out some papers on the dining room table. Grace hesitated, then squared her shoulders and went to answer the door. She seemed to expect a process server, but instead it was Maggie, who walked in as Grace opened the door, saying simply, "Hello?" "Hello," Grace replied, puzzled, as Maggie sat down at the dining room table and opened a case. "Sorry for the short notice," I said to Grace, "but I don't know when I'll have time to take care of this. We need to update our powers of attorney before you leave for your trip, just in case something goes wrong and we need to handle a financial or medical emergency. Oh, and I found a great deal on refinancing the mortgage. Since we'll both be traveling, I figured this was the only time we could get this done." I tried to look apologetic. "Who's this?" Grace asked, pointing to Maggie as she tried to steady her nerves. "I'm Maggie," she replied. "Maggie is a notary," I explained. Grace visibly relaxed. She still had a lover hiding upstairs, but at least she wasn't completely out of control. "That's my Boy Scout," she said with a smile as she sat down, though her eyes were still alert. "That's who I am, hun," I said, handing her a pen and pushing the papers in front of her. I went back to the house, gathered all of Grace's clothes into a pile in the living room, and packed up everything I wanted to keep. The movers came the next day, boxing up Grace's clothes and sending them to a storage facility. They packed up my things separately and moved them to an apartment I had found. Thanks to Sam Willis, I was able to sell the furniture easily. When the house was empty, I took one last walk around before completing my final task. I had gathered our wedding photos, album, and Grace's bridal gown. I took them to the fire pit on the patio, placed them on the charcoal, added some lighter fluid, and lit a match. I watched as everything burned, satisfied with the detail in the video I recorded. You could see every photo as it turned to ash. One day later, I closed on the sale of our marital home, signing as Grace's attorney, in fact. She really should have read what she signed. I deposited the proceeds into my personal account, closed the joint accounts, and left nothing for her. 3 days later, the construction crew leveled the house. They cleared the debris within a few days and started site preparation. Unfortunately, the tree with the treehouse had to go. The new plat had a gazebo planned for that spot. Unfortunately, construction halted when the entire site of our once happy home was just a square of dirt. It seems something went wrong with the permitting process. Seth and I were certain the problem would be resolved a couple of days after Grace returned from Paris, just as soon as the proper forms were received. During all this time, I didn't answer any calls from Grace. I stopped sending texts, ignored her emails, and deleted her voicemails. Some of her friends and family called, but I sent curt replies telling them I was busy and traveling. Joe called on the burner phone, telling me that Grace and Mark seemed under stress and weren't looking so good. Maybe she suspected something. I asked how he knew, but Joe just said he had friends all over, even in Europe. He asked if I was interested in recovering Grace's engagement and wedding rings. When I said no, he asked if someone else could take them. Sure, I replied, I don't care. 2 days before Grace was due back from Paris, Bob called me into his office. I don't know how it happened, but here's the divorce decree. It's way faster than normal, and Seth wouldn't tell me anything. I don't want to know. Just count your blessings. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Joe. Tom, take a vacation right now. Go somewhere with lots of people who can vouch for you. I realized it had been a while since I visited some college friends in New York, so I hopped on an Amtrak train that day. I spent the next few days going to shows, museums, and dining with friends, paying with my credit card and tipping generously so the staff knew who I was. While there, I mailed a DVD to Grace's parents, showing me burning her wedding dress and album. Late Sunday afternoon, while enjoying coffee in Little Italy, my phone rang. It was my father-in-law. Tom, where are you? Grace is in the hospital. Why? I asked, intrigued. She got back on Friday and was kidnapped with a co-worker from the airport. They were drugged and only got out this morning. The co-worker was beaten nearly to death, and Grace, his voice faltered. What happened to Grace? I asked, my interest piqued. She woke up covered in tattoos, calling her a cheater and a liar. Then some guy punched her in the nose, breaking it, and gave her 2 black eyes. Impressive, I thought. I would have been satisfied with her realization that I had outsmarted her in court. But this was a bonus. It was worth losing my soul if I had one. Sorry to hear that, I said. What do you want me to do? My father-in-law was shocked. She's your wife. No, she's not. We got divorced last week. She's been cheating on me with the guy she's traveling with. What? He shouted. Which part wasn't clear? I have video. Want a copy? Silence. Maybe he was having a heart attack. Grace isn't my problem anymore. You'll have to take care of her. You did this, he screamed. Me? I've been in New York since Wednesday, celebrating my divorce. Look, I'm sorry, but I don't think we have anything more to say to each other. I hung up. It occurred to me that city life had become too stressful. I sent Sven an email, respectfully telling him to go screw himself. A quick internet search revealed an REI store in Soho, so I outfitted myself with new hiking gear. Grace never liked camping, so this was my chance to reconnect with my scouting past. The hotel was kind enough to store my luggage for a modest fee, and before I knew it, I was on my way to the Adirondacks to bond with nature until things calmed down. I went back to the house, gathered all of Grace's clothes into a pile in the living room, and packed up everything I wanted to keep. The movers came the next day, boxing up Grace's clothes and sending them to a storage facility. They packed up my things separately and moved them to an apartment I had found. Thanks to Sam Willis, I was able to sell the furniture easily. When the house was empty, I took one last walk around before completing my final task. I had gathered our wedding photos, album, and Grace's bridal gown. I took them to the fire pit on the patio, placed them on the charcoal, added some lighter fluid, and lit a match. I watched as everything burned, satisfied with the detail in the video I recorded. You could see every photo as it turned to ash. One day later, I closed on the sale of our marital home, signing as Grace's attorney in fact. She really should have read what she signed. I deposited the proceeds into my personal account, closed the joint accounts, and left nothing for her. 3 days later, the construction crew leveled the house. They cleared the debris within a few days and started site preparation. Unfortunately, the tree with the treehouse had to go. The new plat had a gazebo planned for that spot. Unfortunately, construction halted when the entire site of our once happy home was just a square of dirt. It seems something went wrong with the permitting process. Seth and I were certain the problem would be resolved a couple of days after Grace returned from Paris, just as soon as the proper forms were received. During all this time, I didn't answer any calls from Grace. I stopped sending texts, ignored her emails, and deleted her voicemails. Some of her friends and family called, but I sent curt replies, telling them I was busy and traveling. Joe called on the burner phone, telling me that Grace and Mark seemed under stress and weren't looking so good. Maybe she suspected something. I asked how he knew, but Joe just said he had friends all over, even in Europe. He asked if I was interested in recovering Grace's engagement and wedding rings. When I said no, he asked if someone else could take them. "Sure," I replied. "I don't care." 2 days before Grace was due back from Paris, Bob called me into his office. "I don't know how it happened, but here's the divorce decree. It's way faster than normal, and Seth wouldn't tell me anything. I don't want to know. Just count your blessings." As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Joe. "Tom, take a vacation right now. Go somewhere with lots of people who can vouch for you." I realized it had been a while since I visited some college friends in New York, so I hopped on an Amtrak train that day. I spent the next few days going to shows, museums, and dining with friends, paying with my credit card and tipping generously so the staff knew who I was. While there, I mailed a DVD to Grace's parents, showing me burning her wedding dress and album. Late Sunday afternoon, while enjoying coffee in Little Italy, my phone rang. It was my father-in-law. "Tom, where are you?" "Grace is in the hospital." "Why?" I asked, intrigued. "She got back on Friday and was kidnapped with a co-worker from the airport. They were drugged and only got out this morning. The co-worker was beaten nearly to death, and Grace," his voice faltered. "What happened to Grace?" I asked. My interest piqued. "She woke up covered in tattoos, calling her a cheater and a liar. Then some guy punched her in the nose, breaking it, and gave her 2 black eyes." Impressive, I thought. I would have been satisfied with her realization that I had outsmarted her in court, but this was a bonus. It was worth losing my soul if I had one. "Sorry to hear that," I said. "What do you want me to do?" My father-in-law was shocked. "She's your wife." "No, she's not. We got divorced last week. She's been cheating on me with the guy she's traveling with." "What?" he shouted. "Which part wasn't clear?" "I have video. Want a copy?" Silence. Maybe he was having a heart attack. "Grace isn't my problem anymore. You'll have to take care of her." "You did this," he screamed. "Me? I've been in New York since Wednesday, celebrating my divorce. Look, I'm sorry, but I don't think we have anything more to say to each other." I hung up. It occurred to me that city life had become too stressful. I sent Sven an email, respectfully telling him to go screw himself. A quick internet search revealed an REI store in Soho, so I outfitted myself with new hiking gear. Grace never liked camping, so this was my chance to reconnect with my scouting past. The hotel was kind enough to store my luggage for a modest fee, and before I knew it, I was on my way to the Adirondacks to bond with nature until things calmed down. Fortunately, I had my passport in case I wanted to cross into Canada, which I did. For the next 8 weeks, I turned off my phone. When I finally turned it back on, there were dozens of voicemails and emails from Grace's account, but I ignored them. I hoped the hacker got the help they needed. 8 weeks later, I met Mike and Bob for drinks. Just so we're clear, Bob said, I terminated our attorney-client relationship after I gave you the divorce decree. I sent you a certified letter. I might not have checked my mail, I admitted. Serious storm, Bob said. Frank? More like a typhoon, Mike replied. Lots of destruction. Bob nodded. Monday morning, Grace goes by the old house with her parents. When she sees the vacant lot, she has a complete meltdown. She drops to her knees, sobbing and kicking like a toddler. Then the construction crew pulls up and she loses it again. She loses it a third time when the workers see her tattoos and start laughing. The ink is so clear you can read it from a distance. Cheater, liar, and so on, in red and blue ink. She also has raccoon eyes from getting punched and tape on her broken nose. Bob continued, that afternoon she and some big firm lawyers show up at my office. They didn't have an appointment, so I made them wait. I loaded my Glock just in case. 15 minutes later, they're all yelling about emergency motions and bar complaints. I had trouble not laughing at the tattoos. When I finally got them to calm down, I asked what the problem was. Was there any false statement in the pleadings? They all stopped and looked at each other. I asked if Grace denied committing adultery. They said no. So I played the video of her and Mark in your bed. They hadn't seen it yet. Everyone just looked embarrassed. Then Grace starts yelling that you didn't give her a chance to explain. I said you didn't care what the reason was. She then started ranting about the house sale and burning her wedding gown. I showed her the powers of attorney and the property settlement agreement. I asked if she denied signing them. She said no, but claimed she didn't agree to the terms. So I asked if her defense was that she didn't read what she signed. How do you think cross-examination would go? She stopped talking. She passed out right there in my office. The lawyers tried to revive her, but I called 911. She refused to go to the hospital, then started screaming about the tattoos and her boyfriend getting beaten up. I said that had nothing to do with you. Maybe Mark pissed off some other husband or girlfriend. I told them they knew where the Fairfax Police Department was if they wanted to file a criminal case. Bob sighed. It gets better. They were still talking about filing a motion for reconsideration when I told them I received an anonymous email that morning. It had links to videos of Grace and Mark in your bed before Paris. The message said the videos were going to everyone Grace knew unless she let this go. You know anything about that? I've been out of town, I replied. They left after that. I haven't heard from them since. Mike chimed in. They must have gone to the cops because detectives came around asking for copies of the videos and reports. Then they lost interest. Neither Grace nor Mark could say what happened, just that they got into a taxi at the airport and woke up in the hospital. The room was billed to Grace's credit card, including room service and minibar charges. This time I told them about the New York cops checking on my stay and how my friends vouched for me. Word is, Bob said, Grace is hiding in her parents' basement, undergoing laser tattoo removal. It's expensive, charging by the square inch, and she's covered head to toe. Tens of thousands of dollars. That's unfortunate, I replied, hiding a grin. And what happened to Mark? He's pretty messed up, Bob said. He's got a long road of physical therapy ahead. Multiple concussions. He'll have trouble finding work. Their firm let them both go after they lost the arbitration. Their relationship fell apart during the trip. The firm had to offer sacrifices to keep the client. Someday, Tom, you'll have to tell us how you managed this, Mike said. Managed what? I'm just a Boy Scout. Maggie was waiting in the car when I left the bar. I'm a bit jealous, she said. No one asked if I actually notarized the documents or if Grace read them before signing. I was ready to say she examined each one carefully. We can discuss this over dinner. I owe you and your boyfriend a thank you for helping me get my freedom. Maggie turned to me, lowering her sunglasses. There is no boyfriend, you idiot. I hit the brakes hard. Really? Now shut up and take me home. You've got a long process of apologizing ahead. All right, I said with a smile. But first, I need to stop at the post office. Why? I'm sending a postcard to a friend, I said, pulling it from the glove compartment. It had the Boy Scout logo on the front. I'm asking if she feels safe now. After mailing the postcard, I drove Maggie home in silence. The weight of everything that had happened over the past few weeks hung heavily in the air between us. My mind raced with thoughts of what had transpired and the uncertain future that lay ahead. When we finally arrived at her place, I parked the car and turned to her. "Maggie, I know I messed up before. I let Grace drive a wedge between us, and I was too blind to see it. I'm sorry." Maggie looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed. "Tom, you did screw up, but we have both made mistakes. Maybe it's time we move past them." I nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. "I'd like that." She gave me a faint smile. "Come on in, we have a lot to talk about." As we walked inside, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't consumed by anger or revenge. Instead, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to turn around. We sat in her living room, a comfortable space filled with the kind of warmth and familiarity that I hadn't felt in a long time. Maggie poured us both a glass of wine, and we settled into a long conversation about everything that had happened since we'd last spoken. She listened patiently as I recounted the events with Grace, the divorce, and the aftermath. I left out the more sordid details of what Joe had done, knowing that some things were better left unsaid. When I finished, Maggie leaned back in her chair and took a sip of her wine. "You've been through a lot, Tom, but you're not the same person you were when we first met. You've changed." I nodded. "I guess I have. I'm not sure if it's for the better, though." She shook her head. "Don't sell yourself short. You've been hurt, betrayed, but you didn't let it destroy you. You stood up for yourself, and you're coming out of it stronger." I looked at her, grateful for the words of encouragement. "Thanks, Maggie. I needed to hear that." She smiled, a real one this time. "So, what's next for you?" I shrugged. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about taking some time off, maybe going somewhere far away. I need to clear my head, figure out what I want to do with my life." "That sounds like a good idea," she said, nodding. "You deserve a break." We talked for a while longer, the conversation flowing easily between us. It felt like old times before Grace had come between us. There was a comfort in that, a sense of familiarity that I hadn't realized I'd missed. Eventually, the conversation turned to lighter topics, and we spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about the good times we'd shared. By the time I left, it was well past midnight, and I felt more at peace than I had in a long time. As I drove back to my apartment, I thought about what Maggie had said. Maybe I had changed, but that didn't mean it was all bad. I had been through hell, but I had come out the other side. Now it was time to figure out what came next. When I finally got home, I collapsed into bed, exhausted but content. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, without the weight of anger or bitterness hanging over me. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. I knew what I needed to do. I called my boss, Sven, and told him that I was taking an extended leave of absence. He wasn't thrilled, but he understood. With that taken care of, I started making plans. I decided to head out west to the mountains where I could disconnect from everything and focus on healing. I booked a cabin in the Rockies for a month, packed my bags, and hit the road. The drive was long, but it gave me plenty of time to think. As I left the city behind, and the landscape changed from urban sprawl to vast open spaces, I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't felt in years. When I finally arrived at the cabin, I was struck by the beauty and solitude of the place. It was exactly what I needed, a chance to get away from everything and find myself again. Over the next few weeks, I spent my days hiking, fishing, and reading. I reconnected with nature, something I hadn't done in a long time. The quiet, the fresh air, and the physical exertion helped me clear my mind and focus on the things that really mattered. I also spent a lot of time reflecting on my relationship with Grace, what had gone wrong, and how I had let it get to that point. I realized that I had lost sight of who I was, that I had allowed myself to become someone I didn't recognize. But here, in the mountains, away from the chaos of my old life, I was starting to rediscover who I was. I wasn't just a lawyer, or a husband or a victim. I was Tom Dalton, and I had the strength to move forward. By the time my month at the cabin was up, I felt like a new man. I knew I wasn't completely healed, and there were still challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them. I packed up my things, took one last look at the mountains, and headed back to the city. When I returned, I felt a sense of calm and purpose that I hadn't felt in a long time. I reconnected with old friends, spent more time with Maggie, and started thinking about my next steps. I wasn't in a rush to figure it all out. I had learned the value of taking things slow. One day, as I was going through some old papers, I found the postcard I had mailed to Grace. It had been returned to me unopened, with a stamp that read, "Address unknown." I stared at it for a long time, then tossed it into the trash. It didn't matter anymore. Grace was in the past, and I was looking toward the future. A few months later, I found myself sitting in a coffee shop, sipping my drink and watching the world go by. I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready for whatever came my way. As I sat there, my phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. "Dinner tonight?" I smiled and replied, "Absolutely, thanks for watching. What do you think of Tom's journey from betrayal to finding peace? Could you have handled it the way he did?" Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.